those
I hear
those
you
10
just fine.
seconds were perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
I hear
always
you.
switching from
Yeah.
speaker to your pods that
Right.
messes me up.
Madam Chair, I understand that our holdup is that we're waiting to stream onto YouTube as per our notice.
Copy.
Ms. Hovey, I haven't been able to verify that we can hear you. Can you?
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Madam Chair, we are live streaming on YouTube, so at your convenience, we're ready to go.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. I am opening up the special meeting of the PRC Nominating Committee at 10:04. And the first thing we'll do is call roll. So staff, if you wouldn't mind helping us out with that, please.
Ms. Seguin,
Present.
Mr. Baldonado,
I am here.
Mr. Lovato, Ms. Nicolou, Licalau, sorry. Mr. Brinkard,
Present.
Ms. Beatles,
Present.
Ms. Ramones.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for joining. I know we have folks on the nominating committee taking this from all over the country and actually all over the world today. So grateful that people were able to call in from wherever they are, and appreciate staff and the Capitol facilities for both providing the room and the technology, but also making it so that those of us on the road are able to still participate today. We will move now to item number 2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance and the state pledge. So I don't know if there's a flag in people's rooms. I'm guessing Sydney, of the one located in another country, probably doesn't have an American flag located in her hotel room, but let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
of the
States.
United States of America and to
And
the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands
One nation.
and nation
Under
under
God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty,
and
justice for all.
And then our state pledge,
Salute the flag
the
of
flag of New Mexico, the Zia
the
symbol of perfect friendship
among you.
among united cultures. Okay. Let's move now to item number 3, which is consideration of and approval of the agenda. Are there any comments, questions, concerns regarding today's agenda? Okay. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
As member Brancard, I move approval of the agenda.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. And I think a simple voice vote for this is fine. So all in favor say aye.
aye.
I,
Anyone in the no category for this motion? Okie dokie. Let's continue on then to public comment. Do we have anyone signed up on the Zoom for public comment or present in the room for public comment today?
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone signed up on Zoom and doesn't appear to be anyone in the meeting room for public comment.
Okay. Well, we'll just remind everyone that we are very interested in the public's participation in this process, and we'll include public comment in each of our meetings on a moving forward basis as we have. So please feel empowered to join us either virtually or in person at these meetings to give your public comment into the process. Moving along then to item 5, which is the introduction of the Department of Justice Counsel. I understand that the nominating committee has been assigned new counsel since our last meeting. So I'd like to turn it over to that individual to introduce themselves, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kristen Hovey. I'm from the Department of Justice, newly rebranded. We used to be the AG's office, but doing the same things here, but happy to be on board with you guys. Most of my help will come with any questions you guys have about the Open Meetings Act, which applies to the committee, as I'm sure many of you are aware. So that will be my main area of helping you guys out. But if you have any other questions, don't be afraid to just let me know. I'm more than happy to meet up with whoever has any questions or just answer other questions you have via email. So that's just a little bit about me. I've been, I guess, at the DOJ now for almost a year. And then I actually interned here at the, when it was the AG's office a few summers ago when I was in law school. So I'm happy to be back. And I have a lot of great support in my division. So if I don't immediately know something, I can definitely consult my coworkers, which are a great wealth of knowledge. So excited to be working with you guys.
Welcome, Ms. Hovey. Thank you for your work with us here on the nominating committee. Are there questions for Ms. Hovey? I do have one, but I'll see if anyone else on the committee has any questions.
Sure.
Yes, Ms. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Sydney. And I guess I should say this since we have the majority of us remote. Thank you, Mr. Brancard, for being there holding down the fort today. It's hard for me to see you. I can see you when you just put your hands up, I could, but unless you intend to do that every time you want to speak, will be hard. Although you could totally do that. But maybe this is a day where you just kind of have to speak in the mic if you want to be added to the list. And same is true, I guess, for our folks participating remotely. You could use the hand raised feature and I could create a stack. But for now, I heard Ms. Beatles. So Ms. Beatles, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Yes, could you please repeat your name, Department of Justice Counsel? I missed that.
Yep. So my name is Kristen Hovey. And then what I can do is send you guys all an email with my contact information after the meeting. Just so you have it if you have questions or anything that pops up.
Well, I do have a question now, and that is when we met the year before last, the representative from the Department of Justice gave us an overview of compliance with the Open Meetings and Inspection of Public Records Acts. And I was wondering if you were planning on doing the same, especially I would say the Open Meetings Act, as we are headed for some active meetings. And I think it would be helpful for us to, I know it would be helpful for me to refresh my knowledge of compliance with the Open Meetings Act, and also would give us an opportunity to ask questions in front of our other committee members so that we can follow up with any points or nuances that we see in our work.
So Madam Chair, I'm Member Beatles, so I'm more than happy to do Open Meetings Act training as well as the Inspection of Public Records Act training. My division is actually doing a training. We do trainings, I think, quarterly right now, that we're able to have people attend virtually. And we also have our next one's going to be in person in Albuquerque in October. We're still working on nailing down an exact date, but I'm also more than happy to provide you guys with just some training with your committee, just me and you guys. So we can definitely do that whenever you guys are available next. We can work on scheduling a date if that works for you, but I'm happy to do whatever is best for you guys.
Yeah, I prefer the latter.
Sounds good.
That's all. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
I have a follow-up question to that, or maybe just a comment, which is that our next scheduled meeting of this committee is October 9th. So if we wanted to add it to the existing schedule, I'm sure we'll have a lot of business to cover that day, but complying with these various statutes is a big part of our job. So I know I'd appreciate it. So maybe my recommendation would be to add it to the agenda for our October 9th meeting. And in reviewing the statute, it notes that we're subject, it calls out for specific items, the Governmental Conduct Act, Inspection of Public Records Act, Financial Disclosure Act, and the Open Meetings Act. So given that all four of those are mentioned, if we could incorporate each of those in some way in the training, I think that would be beneficial.
Madam Chair, that sounds good to me. I can also work with, I believe it's Jordan, to get this up and running for the next meeting so I can get you guys all caught up.
Thanks very much.
And
other questions?
Before
ahead,
I
Ms.
make
Beatles.
a request, I don't know if I welcomed Ms. Hovey, so I do want to welcome her and thank you for your assistance.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I'm excited to work with you guys. I apologize. I'm floating around in the ether right now. I'm visiting my niece in Wisconsin, but I will be in person at your October meeting. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Hovey? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, let's now move to item 6, which is approval of prior meeting minutes. These were distributed to the committee members via your PRC email. So I'd first like to open up discussion on the December 2nd, 2022 draft minutes. See if there's any discussion, edits, comments, etc. Hearing none, I do have a few. So feel free to jump in if you have others afterward that I miss. I did first have a question regarding what needs to be included in these, noting that items 3 and 4 in the minutes don't specify who made the motion or seconded the motion. Is that required to be included? This may be a council member question for Ms. Hovey or to staff.
Madam Chair, I don't know whether it is required or not, but it would make sense that that would be recorded, I would say. To me anyway.
Madam Chair, this is Choya. Yes, I do believe actually that it is required, the first and second motion. So we will make that adjustment.
Super, thank you. So that's for both the approval of the agenda item 3 and then approval of the previous meeting minutes item 4. So we'll add that in. Moving along in the public comment period. I don't know all of the people's names by heart, but there were a few or organizations which I know were incorrect on here, and I hope we're catching all of the errors. But I wanted to note that for the first public comment, Mr. Jim Desjardins, the association is New Mexico REIA, R-E-I-A, not area. So we'll want to change that to NMREIA. Then where it says Rona Weber, Communications Director for the Sierra Club, that's Mona, M-O-N-A, Blabber, B-L-A-B-E-R. And then in the final public comment, Crystal Curley, there's a typo in quotations. This is our only way that we are able to make our voices heard. That is missing an A. And it goes on to say, quote, she was very unhappy that, I'm not sure we can qualify in minutes that someone was unhappy. So I would recommend we change that. She expressed that there was no assurance. That feels a little more true to what would be recorded in the minutes. And then my final comment is on page 5. Before Member Beatles makes the motion to recommend to the governor the names, it notes, quote, 5 people nodded their heads in support. I don't know if minutes typically record body language, and I would recommend we strike that sentence. I do actually have one final item. In item 8, other business, I think we're missing a B. Member Ramones shared past tense her joke for the meeting, for this meeting. So those are my edits that I would propose. If anyone disagrees or has discussion on those, I would otherwise recommend that we include those changes.
I make
Madam
a
Chair.
motion. I make a motion that you have all the changes in block.
I'm sorry, Ms. Ramones, the motion, I could hear you making a motion. I couldn't hear exactly what it said. You broke up.
I move that we accept all of the proposed changes in one motion.
Okay, so that would be a motion to approve the minutes as amended by my comments just then. We lost you again. Is that a yes, or Ms. Ramones? Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Or a second, maybe second first?
This is Committee Member Brancard, I second.
Okie dokie, thank you. I think that a voice vote is okay for this as well. So all in favor of this motion to approve the minutes with those amendments, say aye. Aye.
I,
Anyone against the motion? Say nay. Okay, hearing none, we have approved those minutes. Let's move now to B, which are the minutes from July 15th, 2024. Are there any comments or amendments to these July 15th minutes?
Madam Chair, this is Committee Member Catherine Nicolau here in person with other two members. I do have one correction. It's in regards to my last name. I find that it is misspelled in just a few places. So if we could correct it to Nicolau, I'd greatly appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Welcome.
This is Committee Member
Other-
Committee Member Brancard. Also correction to the spelling of my last name. There's no H in the name.
So BRANCARD throughout.
Ms. Chair, this is Choya. I just want to apologize to all the committee members for the misspellings. As a point of interest, we are experimenting with some AI minute takers. And so I apologize that you all are the guinea pigs for us trying these different programs out.
Well, I think that's very cool. Other comments on the proposed July 15th minutes?
Madam Chair, this is Committee Member Brancard under meeting agenda number 4, committee member introductions. I think with staff introductions, it'd be good if we had last names along with first names.
Great. Add last names to those. Other comments? I have a number again. Forgive me. Starting in the attendees section, I think for consistency with the appointments, maybe just to clarify, going through these, Mr. Brancard, appointee of the MNERD secretary. In statute, it's the secretary of these agencies who make the appointments. So adding secretary. Similarly, for my appointment, I think would be Economic Development Department Secretary, Alicia Keys. Mr. Lovato was the appointment of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, as per the statute. In item 1 under meeting agenda, this is a clarifying question maybe for Mr. Baldonado. Meeting called to order by chair at 2:05. Would it be as acting chair or Secretary Baldonado, since we didn't have a chair?
Yeah, that'd probably be more appropriate, secretary. I would think.
Secretary Baldonado. Then under key discussions, while this isn't a change, I think my preference on a moving forward basis would be that there's a little more detail under kind of the meat of the discussion that the committee had that day. So as we think about minutes on a moving forward basis, the second bullet just says discussion on drafting a job description, soliciting applications, following an interview process. We did talk about that for a while, and I know it comes up again later on the agenda. So no change this time, but just a recommendation or an ask that we have slightly more detailed minutes than what was provided for July 15th. Item 3, action items. There's a motion noted, direct staff to publish the job description by July 22nd, 2024. I assume if there was a motion, someone made the motion, someone seconded the motion, and we voted, but that's not indicated here. And just like our discussion about the December 2022 minutes, I think we need to note who made that motion and who seconded that. So if we could go back to the record, to the recording and add that in. Under number 8, other business. First bullet discusses the changes to the questionnaire. It says allow for new questions to be suggested. I think we should also add or edits to be made, since we describe potentially eliminating questions as well. And those were all of my edits. Additional discussion or feedback on any of that?
I move we accept the minutes as amended with the chairman's suggestions.
Thank you, Ms. Ramones. Also, I would note maybe all the suggestions that were made, including those from Ms. Nicolau and Mr. Brankard as well. Is that a friendly amendment to your motion, Ms. Ramones? I think we may have lost you. I made a small amendment to your motion, Ms. Ramones, which is to accept the minutes as amended by all the comments received by the committee members just now, not just mine.
Yes, that's my motion, or as amended.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baldonado. Any discussion? Okay, and I think a voice vote is fine again. So all in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, please say nay. Okay, we have adopted the minutes for July 15th. And we can move now to item 7, which is the adoption of the Open Meetings Act resolution. We had an Open Meetings Act resolution in the last process of this nominating committee, which is an annual resolution. We received 2 documents, committee members received 2 documents related to this resolution. I will ask staff, I was a little confused about the difference between the 2 Open Meetings Act resolution draft documents we received. So I wonder if you could clarify which one you think we should be discussing, the one that has the border on the paper or the one that has the highlighted, sorry, the blur yellow link inserts to it.
Madam Chair, this is Choya. I actually think it's probably best to discuss both. The one with the border is a updated version of the Open Meeting Act resolution that the committee adopted during the last cycle. So you'll see a couple of red lines in there. The one without the border, the one with the highlighted places for the links, is the one that Ms. Hovey's office has recently given us as a template. And so we, rather than making that decision on our end, we've provided both for the committee's convenience and adoption.
So questions to staff or Ms. Hovey or discussion on these two documents?
Madam Chair, I can speak a little bit to the version that has the highlighted link, I think is what is highlighted there. As mentioned, this version is the most recent template form that my office provides. You'd notice it's probably a lot shorter than the previous year's versions. And in doing so, we hope to provide a little bit more of a readable document for the public who would be reading the resolution, as this is essentially the committee's promise to the public regarding how much in advance the committee will provide notice of their meetings and such. So being, I should say, I would recommend the version that I sent over, just because it is a bit more readable. But if your committee has any additions that you feel strongly about adding, that is perfectly fine as well. So that's just my input there, but I can answer any questions you have about the version I sent over, as needed.
Thank you. So recommendation from our council to look at the document, New Mexico Public Regulation Commission Nominating Committee 2024 through 2025 Annual Open Meetings Act Resolution, a 2-page document, not the longer bordered multi-page document. Discussion? Well, I will speak to say that I'm assuming we can maybe direct staff to add in the various links regarding the website and the telephone number. I'm guessing that's PRC staff who's staffing this committee would be the appropriate phone number, but staff, I wonder if you could confirm that.
Madam Chair, yes, the links would be the nominating committee website hosted at the PRC website. And then the telephone number would be our ADA assistance designee that we use for all of our public meetings at the PRC.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this committee
Go
member
ahead.
Brancard, I have a few questions for the Assistant Attorney General
Please.
on this. So your model makes a distinction, this is something I've seen for decades, between regular and special meetings. This committee meets every 2 years and has sort of an organizational meeting to begin with, which would probably be a special meeting. But at that meeting that we had last time, we listed a series of meeting dates for the rest of the year. Would those meeting dates then be regular meetings?
Just so I understand here, so normally the committee lists out each date that it will meet when it does plan to meet, or I should say. So you're wondering if these are special meetings or regular meetings and what would apply?
Yes, I mean, it says regular meetings shall be identified annually. So every 2 years, we sort of set up a schedule of meetings for that 2-year cycle, which is really only the fall of that year. But the last meeting, we listed out a series of meetings that we anticipate happening over the next 3 months. Would those be then regular meetings for the purpose of notice under the open meetings resolution?
To me, it would seem like they would count as regular meetings. This might be a question for staff to answer, just because I think you would have more familiarity with it. But to me, these seem like regular meetings if they're noticed this far in advance.
Madam Chair, Mr. Brankard, the the regularly scheduled meetings are not regular for this committee, so it's, to me, it's a hard call and maybe not one that has a lot of effect on this committee.
Well, the effect is on notice. A regular meeting gets 10 days notice and a special meeting gets 72 hours notice.
Under the proposed,
Under the Attorney General's proposed
exactly.
resolution.
If I may, Madam Chair, Committee Member Brankard, that could also be changed. Ms. Hovey, it's not my understanding that 10 days notice is required by statute. Is that right? That's a best practice.
Yeah, so that's 10 days is like our safe harbor is how I would put it. So usually we just say 10 days is reasonable under the statute. So I guess my advice would be, in general, just provide 10 days notice. But it seems like if you're noticing these dates way ahead of time, you've already complied.
Ms. Hovey, is it your office's position that if it's less than 10 days, that's not reasonable notice?
We advise 10 days, but there are certain situations in which there are emergency meetings where 10 days notice is not reasonable. So we would just say our recommendation is generally 10 days is reasonable. Anything less than that we can't guarantee is reasonable. So hopefully that helps just a little bit.
Madam Chair, Committee Member Brankard, we can do 10 days notice. It's just not been this committee's practice.
Yeah. Well, if the notice is involving posting on the website, we can list all the dates right now, right? Of all these meetings. And then if need comes up, if we need to have an extra meeting because we didn't get everything decided at a particular meeting, then we can call a special meeting.
Madam Chair, Committee Member, yes, absolutely.
My other question is that in our existing resolution, we actually provide for an entire meeting to be virtual. Is that no longer allowed by the Attorney General's office?
Madam Chair, Member Brinkard, it is no longer a recommendation that meetings be purely virtual. That was more so a way to make meetings more, I guess, possible during COVID. But seeing as those conditions are no longer, I guess, statewide or affecting the nation as they were a few years ago, we recommend at least having a physical meeting location for each meeting, even if members cannot attend. There should be a physical location for each meeting.
Thank you. And finally, the Attorney General's pared down resolution does not mention minutes of the meeting. Did I miss that? I assume the Attorney General's office still expects minutes of each meeting.
Madam Chair, Member Brinkard, yes. So the Open Meetings Act resolution is just required to have basically the procedure that the committee wishes to follow for giving notice of its meetings. The minutes you don't need to have information about how the committee will take minutes in this Open Meetings Act resolution. The statute just applies generally. So you'd be restating it if it were also in the resolution. So we took it out as it was a little bit duplicative.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Additional discussion or questions? Ms. Beatles?
Thank you for noticing. Ms. Hobie, I appreciate the pared down version. And maybe for most of us or anyone who watches meetings of public bodies, it goes without saying that members of the public are allowed to attend. But does it say that specifically in your pared down version?
Madam Chair, Member Beatles, are you wondering if if that still applies then, even if it's not in the resolution?
No, I'm wondering if it's in the resolution, your pared down version. I just missed it.
Let me just pull up the document really quick. I do not believe it is in there. That's something that you can certainly add if you'd like, but if it's not in there, it's because it doesn't need to be in there.
So I would like to see that added. I don't know that I need to make it in the form of a motion. Let me know, but I do prefer your pared down version. I think it's much easier to read, but I think that we should also inform the public instead of just assuming that they know, what the Open Meetings Act is there for, that they are allowed to attend our meetings and provide comment if the agenda includes an item for public comment.
So, Madam Chair, Member Beatles, what you also can do if you want to make sure the public is aware that they may attend and comment if there is a public comment section, that's something you can certainly include in the resolution. Or what I find a lot of my other boards and commissions do is include that on the agenda. So when the public is viewing the agenda for the meeting, they are aware that they may certainly contribute during that meeting, but happy to add whatever needs to be added as well.
So the purpose of the resolution, let me just think out loud here for a minute, is to verify for purposes of your office, right, that we are complying with the Open Meetings Act and not necessarily to inform the public of their rights.
Madam Chair, Member Beatles, that is correct. So under the Open Meetings Act, there's a specific subsection that requires each public body, such as the committee, to determine its notice procedures at least once per year in a public meeting. So this is primarily the purpose of the document. So that's where my office comes in and provides a template and reminds each public body that they should adopt an annual resolution or other announcement during an open meeting, just so the public is aware of how the public body will be providing notice, so they may listen and attend.
Thank you. And this will be posted on our page on the commission's website, right?
Madam Chair, Member Beals, yes, that is correct. Sometimes the boards and committees also provide a copy if there's a bulletin board at the office and things like that. But I find that most of the time, and as they should, each public body does have this on their website.
So I would like to include a simple sentence to the effect that members of the public are allowed to attend our meetings and provide comment if the agenda includes an item for public comment. And I know that while that may not be necessary to assure compliance with your office, to the extent that a member of the public refers to that to see whether they should attend meetings and which ones and for what purpose, I would like to tell them that.
Madam Chair, Member Beatles, I think that's a great idea, especially this is a pretty unique committee. So I think that helping the public out with that sounds like a great idea. So I'm more than happy to work with Jordan and staff just to come up with maybe a little paragraph that you guys can take a look at and okay.
All right, thank you.
So am I tracking then? I wonder if we should direct staff and Ms. Hovey to update this document and include a new section related to public participation or public comment for us to consider at our next meeting. So essentially to table the discussion today. Are folks comfortable with that?
I would appreciate that. And also, I don't know if there were any changes that arose as a result of the discussion with Mr. Brankard, but I would like to see those too.
Madam Chair, Member Beatles, we can certainly do that.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I have another comment.
Please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Brancard. Along with the minutes, another thing that's been dropped from this resolution is any discussion of closing meetings or having a closed meeting. I assume we still just rely on the statute then for that process?
Madam Chair, Mr. Brinkard, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will table this item for today and direct staff and Ms. Hovey to work together on an updated draft version for the committee's consideration and possible approval at our next meeting.
Madam Chair, I'm assuming that you're saying that they should use the Department of Justice proposal as the base?
That's my understanding of what we've been talking about, but please let me know if anyone thinks otherwise. But yes, this DOJ recommended 2-page document with the yellow highlights, inclusive of Mr. Brankard's recommended changes, inserting those highlighted pieces, and then adding the section on public participation and comment related to the discussion Ms. Beatles just had with Ms. Hovey.
Madam Chair, understood.
Okay. Moving on then to item 8, announcements. I think we'll open it up to announcements generally. I did want to note we did have someone join to provide public comment. I know we already opened and closed the public comment portion of the agenda today. However, I'm inclined to make space for a public comment because we want to encourage that. So unless anyone disagrees, I would say on a moving forward basis, we do want to encourage people to join in time for the noticed public comment section of the agenda, but we'll make an exception as we didn't have anyone at that point today. So I'm going to ask that we take this public comment as the first item under announcements and then move on with any additional announcements per the agenda. So I think as far as I know, we only had one person, and that is Ms. Feebleman. So please go ahead and provide your comment. Thanks for joining.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate the chance. I should have registered in advance with Patrick, but didn't realize that what I had was a YouTube link. So thanks for making that possible. I'm Camila Feibelman. I'm the director of the Rio Grande chapter of the Sierra Club. And I first want to thank each of you for your service. I know you're taking time out of your professional and busy schedules, and just listening to the conversation with the lawyers of understanding how to make this process as open and as public as possible is important. As the director of the Rio Grande chapter of the Sierra Club, representing 35,000 members and supporters, I'd just like to elevate the importance of the role of the PRC commissioners in attending to New Mexico's contribution to climate change. And I want to put that into perspective of the summer that we've all experienced, and maybe the last couple of summers. Seeing devastating fires in 2 very different parts of the state, only to have those impacted fire scars followed by devastating floods. Seeing people lose their ability to pay for homeowners insurance because companies don't want to expose themselves to the risk of extreme fire. Experiencing the heat dome that apparently continues. Yes, it's cooler in the morning and the afternoon, but at midday, what's recess like for my 8-year-old, is questions that we really have to ask as a community. And so understanding that the Public Regulation Commission has such a big role in transitioning us, not just to energies that are renewable and better for the climate, but are also cheaper. There's a reason that we all got a $10 rate decrease as PNM customers once the San Juan generating station closed and is being replaced by renewables and battery storage. The PRC didn't even have to pick a more expensive alternative that was also more sustainable. The economics were behind those proposals. And yeah, there have been market issues that are affecting all supply chains. But I appreciate the PRC continuing to hold not just climate, not just tax-based replacement, but also consumer health, worker health. And those are some of the things we'd like to really hear any candidate that comes before you talk about and understand that the public good isn't just an economic good, but it's also a climate good. How much do these fires, how much do emergency room visits because of overheating cost our society? How many days are lost when kids have severe asthma attacks and their parents are missing work because of that? So I appreciate your consideration of these really existential questions as you choose a new commissioner to our Public Regulation Commission. And thank you again for your service.
Thank you very much for your comment today. Did we have anyone else, Patrick or Jordan or anyone on staff, sign up late?
Madam Chair, we don't have anyone else. Thank you.
Okay. All right, super. Well, let's then move back into announcements and see if there are other announcements from staff or anyone on the committee.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Troya.
Please.
I just wanted to follow up. Last meeting, we discussed sending a letter to the governor requesting direction on salary for the upcoming appointment. That letter, after we researched the previous letter that was sent by the chair, we discovered that the governor had in fact replied to the chief of staff. So in consultation with you, we changed that letter to be addressed from me, chief of staff of the PRC, and that letter is with the governor as we speak.
Thank you for that update and for sending that letter. We'll be hopeful we get a response from that office soon so we can best advise candidates. So thank you. Other announcements? Hearing none, let's move to item 9 in the agenda, which is discussion and/or potential action items, both specific to the questionnaire. So the first is discussing the questionnaire and the second is approving the questionnaire. So all members of the committee received the version of the questionnaire that was used in the previous round of recommended candidates to the governor for appointment. I know some people may have submitted draft changes to staff in advance. However, I don't think it was particularly robust. Not to say that people don't have robust thoughts about this. So since we don't have an updated version based on pre-submitted changes by the committee members, I would just rather to open this up for discussion on the questionnaire, basically start from scratch using the previous version as our starting point and ask for changes, additions, subtractions to the questionnaire for us to be able to use with this current class of candidates.
Madam Chair, there's a few things I wanted to discuss.
Please go ahead, Mr. Baldonado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was looking at question number 4 and I feel like we could open that one up or rework it a little bit. Maybe add some language that kind of identifies the idea that I guess I kind of came up with maybe this, and I'm just reading from my messy notes here, so if I mess it up, I'm sorry. Seeking ways to find a balance in providing reliable energy while reducing carbon emissions, or while being sensitive to reducing carbon emissions. Like, make the question not necessarily just so focused on decarbonizing the economy, but make it more with the idea that you have to provide reliable energy, and some of that is going to be through carbon type, generation instead of solely, renewables. So I don't know if there's any desire to kind of maybe expand on that question just a bit. And then I'll move on to item 7. I'm reading it and I'm confused. Did we have a separate list, or as it reads currently, as you evaluate issues before the PRC, which of the following factors do you view as most important and why? Are we expecting them to list their own factors, or did we have a list? I can't remember.
Well, I remember question 7 and question 8 to be a little confusing.
Yeah.
As we got responses back and maybe a little bit duplicative. Question 5 mentions social, cultural, and environmental externalities. I think people, if I remember correctly, sort of used those to inform their question to 7. And then I remember responses to 8 sort of reading like, hey, didn't I already just answer this?
Yeah, that's
so I think
maybe
I think your question is good.
Or
maybe combining a few of the questions.
Yeah, not be so vague. Or could we come up with, I mean, when we just say that, when we just kind of leave it open-ended, you're sort of going to get all sorts of different answers, I guess, and maybe that's what we're after. But I almost feel like if we gave them, a list of 10 things that maybe is in the world of regulation in this idea, and that they can pick from there, saying, oh well, I feel like this one's the most important to me. I don't know if that's appropriate, or I'm just sort of throwing things out there to get the conversation started. But those are the only questions that occur to me that are just kind of hard to read, or maybe vague. And I don't have any additions to the entire questionnaire, because I feel like it's long enough already. I don't know if that's the feeling that our group here has, but I know that some folks went and gave us, several pages of answers, and other folks were more short to the point and things of that nature. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for now, Madam Chair.
So maybe let's take those one at a time before continuing on the discussion. The first one being a change to question number 4. I heard Mr. Baldonado mention something about providing balance, focusing on keeping electricity reliable. Are there others who would seek to change this one, incorporate some of Mr. Baldonado's changes? Or disagree?
I don't disagree with Mr. Baldonado, but I tend to like the way the question is worded, because I want to hear from the candidate what he or she thinks about the factors that the commission must consider in overseeing that process, aka including reliability. So that's because I do think that, I mean, while I tend to agree that you don't want to sacrifice reliability and reasonableness of rates, reliability of service and reasonable of rates, you also, I wanted to, I like that it left it open for the candidates to raise those issues as factors that must be considered, and that is in fact the commission's role. But so I'm not really disagreeing with his change or what he's trying to get at, because yes, the commission is statutorily required to, protect and promote the public interest, and to balance utilities interest against ratepayers interest and all that. But I was kind of hoping that the question as worded would leave it for the candidate to raise, like, the reliability impact issue, for example.
Well, to note, the question, the way it reads right now, is not what is the role of the commission, but it is what is the role of electric utilities in decarbonizing the economy. So to the extent that that's relevant.
But the second part says, am I looking at the same questionnaire? And what is the commission's role in overseeing?
So
Okay,
what I'm hearing you say, Ms. Beatles, is leave the question as is to
yes,
make it a little more open-ended.
yes.
Any other feelings on this one, question 4? Change it, keep it the same.
Could you read the question the way that it's written, please? I'm sorry, I'm in transit.
No problem. The previous version reads, what is the role of electric utilities in decarbonizing the economy? And what is the commission's role in overseeing that process?
And Mr. Baldonado, what do you want? How would you revise it? I'm just.
Well, Madam Chair and Member Ramones, I just kind of felt like the question sort of focused on the word decarbonizing, when the way I want, what I want to hear from a potential candidate is how they're going to, honor the idea of decarbonizing, but still focus on reliability and keeping, costs low to the ratepayer. Obviously, as this industry transitions to more renewables, that's more expensive, and it translates to more expense in the bill that the folks pay on a monthly basis. So I just kind of felt like we could get a better feel for what our candidates might be thinking in that realm. But to Ms. Beadle's point, it does just sort of leave it hanging out there for them to fill in the blanks, So I just brought it up to say that I felt that question might be lacking in my estimation.
I'm comfortable with leaving the question as is. I think a middle ground, if we wanted to amend it in some way, could be, what is the role of electric utilities in decarbonizing the economy, comma, providing reliable electric service, comma, and ensuring affordable rates? And what is the commission's role in overseeing that? I mean, that is a big old question.
Yeah.
Again, I'm comfortable with leaving it as is, but if it's the will of the group to open it up more, we could specifically mention each of those items you raised, reliability and affordability as well. Preference on keep as is or open up more broadly from others on the committee?
Madam Chair, this is Catherine Nicolau. I particularly like your addition. I think the clearer we are, I think is a service to the applicants, so they understand. But I think we may get better answers if we make that question clear. So I do like the additions. It's a little bit longer of a question, but I think that might be a good idea.
So that would be adding decarbonizing the economy, comma, providing reliable electric service, comma, and ensuring reasonable rates. And what is the commission's role in overseeing that process, Ms. Beatles?
Thank you. And I'm gonna sound like a pain. I'm sorry, but I mean, utilities are statutorily required to provide adequate and reliable service at fair, just, and reasonable rates. So, I mean, there is a presumption that that may be in conflict with decarbonizing the economy, and that's not necessarily true. And it's also up to the utilities to ensure that it's not. I mean, to the commissioners to ensure that it's not. That's why they have regulatory authority. But so I know that I'm kind of being a pain, and I'm raising something that maybe but I think it's important. I mean, are we kind of fishing to make sure that the candidate understands that it's a statutorily required duty for utilities to provide reliable service at reasonable rates? Because that's what the utilities have to do by law, and that's what the commission's role in regulation is to ensure.
Well, what if we left 4 as is, so no new language, and tried to include these core statutory requirements around reasonable rates, just and reasonable rates, and reliable service into a different question? You know, perhaps if we're thinking about number 7, combining it with 8 in some way, Ms. Ramones, number 7 right now is, as you evaluate issues before the PRC, which of the following factors do you view as most important and why? Yes, right. So we don't say which factors. I want to be thoughtful about the time, because I could imagine us updating this document. We could get into every little thing here. I do support the idea of including things around reliability and affordability in this document in some way. I think I'm inclined, based on the discussion, to keep number 4 as is, with the focus on decarbonization as kind of the core thrust of that question, but to figure out how to incorporate affordability and reliability into a different question. And maybe this is that one, but I don't know. Ms. Beatles?
Yes, just a question. And I know that you and Mr. Baldonado discussed this just a few minutes ago, but what happened here in this question? Like, did we list factors? What did we asked with number 7, which of the following factors do you view as most important and why? And I don't have the benefit of having my notes from, year before last with me. So did we list the factors? Because I do definitely agree that reliability and affordability should be included there. Is something missing from this draft, I guess, is my question.
Madam Chair, Committee Member Brancard, I went back and looked at our prior questionnaire, and we had a list of 12 factors in that question. Okay. Reliability and affordability were each separate factors in that question.
So maybe go ahead, Ms. Ramones.
So the missing factors in the draft that we're looking at right now were for question 8, and it included reliability and affordability.
Mr. Brancard, do you mind reading those 12 factors for us, please?
Sure, if you have some time. So 1, portfolio standards / energy mix. 2, climate change. 3, reliability. 4, flexibility. 5, sustainability. 6, affordability. 7, grid capability / stability. 8, scalability, I don't know if that's a word, of technology. Then promoting new technologies. Then eliminating certain energy sources from New Mexico's portfolio. Then social justice for frontier communities. And finally, maintaining New Mexico's ability to produce the energy it needs in New Mexico, i.e. keeping New Mexico energy self-sufficient.
Thank you. I'm sort of inclined to remove the multiple choice here and hear openly from candidates about the factors that they view as most important in executing their duties broadly. I think that that's an interesting list and is probably not comprehensive, though it is quite broad. How would people feel about combining 7 and 8 and removing those multiple choice answers and just giving them an open-ended question as you evaluate issues before the PRC, which factors do you view as most important and why? Or is that too hard without any ideas, feeders?
Madam Chair, I seem to like, I mean, I guess I was struggling with the question because previous to knowing, recalling the list that Mr. Bringer just read to us, you know, because it said which of the following, but if you're specifically saying what factors exist out there in this world of regulation that are the most important to you, like something to get them to deliver to us what they view as most important. It could be a little bit scattered, I guess, you know, the answers that come in. And when we try and compare apples to apples, we might be getting apples to oranges, but it does make them think. And obviously these folks that are going to be our top candidates are surely, you know, very familiar with these factors that exist out there.
So is anyone opposed to that approach, removing the specific factors and asking them to instead describe to us which factors they view as most important and why?
Madam Chair, I support it, and I support eliminating number 8 then.
Okay. So just so far, we've said number 4, we're keeping the same everything up until 7. 7, we're saying as you evaluate issues before the PRC, which factors do you view as most important and why? And delete number 8. I'm going to keep going here. If there are more comments.
Chair,
I had, oh, please go ahead, Ms. Nicola.
Excuse me. Thank you. Madam Chair, I do have some additions that I want to go over with among us here at the committee, but I don't know if now is a good time, so I can wait until you go through the rest of the document.
I think it's a great time. Please go ahead.
Okay. So Madam Chair, as I reviewed the questionnaire, it dawned on me that unless I missed something, which I don't think I did, there's not a single question related to broadband. Therefore, I do have 4 questions. Would you like me to just briefly read them?
Please.
The first question, Madam Chair, is, since the pandemic, consumers have become keenly aware of the fact that broadband is as important to daily life as water, electricity, and gas. Based on your experience, should broadband be regulated as a utility? The reason for this question is we would get a sense of whether this applicant understands the regulatory framework that broadband is a part of. So that's what that would allow us to see. A second question, potential question, in what ways can the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission ensure that broadband is both universally available and universally adopted? You just give me one moment. I will, and here are the other 2. Third potential question. Despite the utility industry's need to find economies of scale and other efficiencies in their operations, should it be the Commission's role to promote competition as part of the Commission's responsibility to protect consumers? And the last one, should the Commission play a key role in collaboration with the state legislature and the governor in promoting rural economic development? I do believe that 4th question could possibly already be encompassed in one of the questions on the questionnaire already. I'm trying to find it. But in any case, perhaps those were the 4 additions that I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the committee member, could you repeat the first question? Not the lead in, just the question, the first one.
Yes, the first question, committee member Brancard, is since the pandemic, consumers.
Just the question part.
So sorry. Based on your experience, should broadband be regulated as a utility?
Would it be more correct to say, should providers of broadband be regulated as utilities?
Oh, I do believe that would be more specific.
Thank you for the ideas on the questions. As I am internalizing those, I think the first two seemed broadband specific. The third had to do with competition, perhaps broadly, and the fourth, economic development broadly. Is that a correct characterization?
Correct, Madam Chair. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Beatles?
Yes, with respect to question one, the lead-in was part of the question, however, right?
Yes, Committee Member Beatles, Madam Chair, Committee Member Beatles, that is correct. However, if it makes it too long, I think we can do without it and just, I think we'll still get what we need out of just the question.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I just kind of paused when you said it's as important as regulating electric service and water service. I mean, I think it's pretty darn close, but I don't know that it's necessary for life, maybe in an emergency situation. So I would say something to the effect the pandemic has shown us, in your words, which were fine, that broadband is an essential service as opposed to as important as the other things that you mentioned. And I liked Bill's change that it's should providers be regulated as a utility. I mean, you know, you're kind of raising a very thorny issue because there's a lot of jurisdiction that is exclusive in the federal government. And so the answer could be very complex, but maybe you want someone to at least know that, right? And maybe we could smush your questions 1 and 2, because I mean, that's the goal, is to make it universally available and adopted. But I want to hear questions 2, 3, and 4 one more time, please.
Sure, Madam Chair, Committee Member Beatles, no problem. You said you want to hear questions 2 and 3, is that correct?
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4. Question number 2 was, in what ways can the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission ensure that broadband is both universally available and universally adopted? Number 3 would be, despite the utility industry's need to find economies of scale and other efficiencies in their operations, should it be the Commission's role to promote competition as part of the Commission's responsibility to protect consumers? And then the third one, should the Commission play a key role in collaboration with the state legislature and the governor in promoting rural economic development?
So, Ms. Nicolau, I wonder if your second question is captured by the existing question 2, or if question 2 could be amended to fit that in. To read it, our existing question 2 is competition between generators, whether utility or independent power producer owned, helps ensure the lowest cost, best suited resources procured by electric utilities, ultimately resulting in the best deal for customers. What do you see as the role of a commissioner in ensuring fair and transparent competition in resource procurement? Would that maybe eliminate resource procurement and then you get to competition, or do we think these are addressing 2 different things? 2 different things. Sydney's nodding her head.
I'm thinking 2 different things. I mean, I like the questions about the telecommunications industry. And when you ask whether it should be the commission's role to promote competition to protect consumers, do you mean to promote competition amongst providers of broadband?
Madam Chair, Committee Member Beadle is correct.
Okay, because I think what the commission could do to promote competition between broadband providers is very different from what they can do with respect to independent power producers and grid interconnection issues, I think. So in the RFPs in the electric utility industry, that whole process is so different. That's why I think that Committee Member Nicolau's question is very distinct. And I actually I like your questions a lot. So I think we should work them into the extent that the other committee members support and agree.
Madam Chair.
Please.
Just to add to Member Beadle's comments on Member Nicolau's questions, I do kind of feel like 1 and 2 could be one question, and we could probably leave off the intro. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm thinking, did it take COVID for us to realize that, or was it already like that was going to be our reality no matter what? 20 years ago, we didn't have this conversation because broadband wasn't nearly what we're using it for today. And then the universal, the idea of universally provided, I guess I want more context on that. I mean, are we trying to say that it would be mandated that every corner of the state has access to broadband, or, with technology and, I've got friends that use that Starlink internet deal that are in the middle of nowhere, not connected to a darn thing, and yet they have, the availability to them. So I don't know if we can get those questions to read that way, but I do think that's a pretty interesting addition to our questionnaire.
So I think I'm hearing general support, and I would agree, support for inclusion of some broadband specific questions on this document. I'm hearing maybe a request to combine 1 and 2 in some way. And I wonder, putting you on the spot, Ms. Nicolau, if you can think of a question that might combine those two.
Chair, just for clarification, are we referring to my first 2 questions, or referring? Okay. So
yep. So the one about should broadband be regulated as a utility, which I think was already maybe a proposal to change the wording of that slightly, and then in what ways can the PRC ensure broadband is universally available and adopted, merging those in some way.
Madam Chair, perhaps we could say the pandemic has shown us that broadband is an essential service. And based on your experience, should broadband internet service providers be regulated utility, what was Committee Member Brancard? I forget exactly how you worded it, but it sounded really good. Should internet service providers be regulated as a utility? Something to that effect. Therefore, ensuring that broadband is both universally available and adopted. Something to that effect comes to mind.
Can I ask, I have a few notes later in the document about this too, how much we are expecting these candidates to create new policy versus implement policy. And I'll be the first to say I know less about the broadband side of the house than the electric side of the house. So are we asking them about a statutory change here? Are we asking them about a changing of the scope of the duty of a commissioner with how broadband is currently regulated?
Madam Chair,
I think this is a question for Ms. Nicolau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. From my perspective, I believe that it would be appropriate to not ask necessarily about regulatory change or what term did you use?
Policy change or
Policy change.
expansion of the scope.
Perhaps what I'm going for more is an idea that potential applicants understand or at least have researched if they're going to be regulating telecommunications in some shape or form. Let's say the state legislature passes some sort of broadband bill, right? That comes to the PRC commissioners and now they have to implement those rules. I think it would just be great for us to have applicants that can speak to the regulatory framework for telecommunications. Because if they can, and if we find that applicants understand the regulatory framework, then when they're tasked with regulating telecom, I believe that they would be able to do it much more successfully. So that's, I think, what I'm going for. So if there are questions relating to changing policy, perhaps we don't include those at this time. I would be okay with that.
So could we ask more broadly, what is kind of the punchline of what you were saying there? If we want to determine the extent to which candidates have an understanding of regulatory policy related to broadband, could we ask it like that? You know, to Ms. Beatles, maybe you want to jump in. See your hand.
I know I'm having trouble keeping it down. So it's my understanding that the PRC has a role in awarding state universal service funds to competitive broadband providers, and also conferring eligible telecommunications carrier status to broadband companies that want federal universal service funds. And I think the candidates should know that, because there is work that the commission does in that area. And the goals of those state and federal programs is to ensure universal availability and adoption. So, I mean, should we ask, and this is kind of following up on your point too, Ms. Seguin, what is the commission's role in ensuring that broadband service is universally available and adopted? Or you can just say is universally available. And if you want to ask a compound question, which some of the others are, should broadband be regulated as a utility or something, or should providers of broadband be regulated as a utility? I think there is a way to merge those 2 points, but I think it's ultimately, what Ms. Nicolau, where she wants to go with this.
Madam Chair, Committee Member Beatles, I appreciate you simplifying that. It's simplifying it in a way that's actually giving it more clarity. So Committee Member Beatles, I like your suggestion a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That might be the way to go,
So,
especially, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Do we have that written down, or Ms. Beatles, were you just free flowing there?
I was free flowing. So what is the commission's role in ensuring that broadband service is universally available? Something to that effect. And the second part of the question was Bill Breakard's version, which is, should providers of broadband service be regulated as a utility?
Ms. Nicolau, are you comfortable with? I think those are 2 unique questions. I think we should put them as 2 questions.
Madam Chair, yes, that sounds good to me. Thank you.
So then I wonder, with your 3rd and 4th question, the 3rd being the one focusing on competition and the 4th promoting rural economic development, I wonder, I think the tension in the document is how much do we put in this document versus how much would we address in an interview? So do we want those 2 additional questions as well, or are there ways we could massage them into other questions? For example, in number 4, where you talk about rural economic development, you talk about the relationship to the legislature. I wonder, there's a few places where we talk about policy. Original number 12, the Public Regulation Commission is a regulatory body. Often the line between regulation and policy can get blurred. Please explain your view as to where the line between regulation and policy is. And then it goes on. I guess my question is, do we want to specifically mention rural economic development, or is that, like the other ones we talked about earlier, a factor that perhaps someone could just bring up on their own when they're discussing important factors?
Madam Chair, this committee member Nicolau, I'm okay with not including the last 2 questions. I do feel like, based on our discussion and some of the points that you're bringing out, these should be addressed, whether it's through the answers or in some shape or form with these questions. I think that I was thinking of it in terms of broadband, but the more I look at it, I think we'll get what we're looking for based on what's already in the questionnaire.
Okay, thank you. I have a few suggested deletions and additions. I'll go through some of those. So I wondered, in that question I just read, number 12, about the Public Regulation Commission being a regulatory body, the final sentence is, please explain your view as to where the line between regulation and policy is, and actions and or ideas you would bring to the commission to help maintain the focus on regulation. I propose striking the second half of that sentence. So instead it would just be, please explain your view as to where the line between regulation and policy is.
I think that's a good change.
My next question is, there's just a few that I wonder if it's good information, but maybe it's something for an interview. So I didn't know if we necessarily needed it, but if people want it, that's fine. Number 13, what is the most consequential action or decision of the PRC in the last 20 years and why?
That got some really interesting answers though, Ricky. Remember, I mean,
it did
go into how these people thought, and also what they knew about the PRC. And we've got a lot of candidates who are out of state. Most of them are from out of state. In fact, I'm wondering, do you really want to pitch that one?
No, let's keep it. I'm fine with keeping that. I do kind of want to delete the next one though. In the last 20 years, has the PRC exceeded its authority? Please explain when and how. To me, that's a legal question. And I think people did their best at answering that last time. But I think that I'm not totally comfortable with asking people to answer that question. So I would recommend striking that one.
I'm okay with deleting that one. And quite honestly, as I recall, in the answers to the questionnaires, almost everybody said it all had something to do with San Juan generating station.
Right. And I felt like we got a lot of policy opinions, which were, of course, illuminating, but perhaps different than I think the legal read of that question, which is exceeding authority. So I would recommend deleting that, making space for some other questions. I had an idea for another question that's broad and then a specific thing. So the next question that maybe wouldn't have made sense last time, but could make sense now, which would be, how would your experience complement that of the existing commission and commissioners? Now that we know who the other 2 commissioners are. And then maybe I'll mention my
question.
My last one is kind of a big one, but bear with me. I feel like something that was hard about reviewing applications is that we are trying to add up people's years of experience. We're trying to parse through whether or not their job at a water utility counts. I wonder if we just put everything, every requirement in here and ask them to respond to it one by one. So that would be per the statute. A, candidates must be independent of the industries regulated by the commission and possess demonstrated competence. Please affirm this is true for you. B, a commissioner shall not have a financial interest in a public utility in New Mexico or elsewhere and shall not have been employed by a commission-regulated entity at any time during the 2 years prior to appointment to the commission. Please affirm this is true for you. C, commissioners must devote their entire time to the business of the commission and may not pursue any other business or vocation or hold any other office for profit. Please affirm you understand this requirement and will comply if offered a position. D, no more than 2 commissioners can be registered with the same political party. Given that both existing commissioners are registered Democrats, this position must be filled by an individual who is not a registered member of the Democratic Party. Please state your registered political party affiliation. E, please describe in detail with total years listed how you meet these minimum requirements. I, a baccalaureate degree from an institution, B, attained higher education resulting in at least a professional license, It's a lot, but I think it helps us be sure that we are fulfilling our duties of ensuring that candidates meet these requirements and making them explain to us exactly how they do. Ms. Beatles?
Yes, clarification, please. So there may be a signature block at the bottom of this questionnaire, whereas the candidate affirms that the statements he or she made
Jeff Jones
were true. Is that kind of what are you just want the candidate to affirm their eligibility and qualification under what you just listed, Ms. Seguin, or do you want, I mean, I'm thinking maybe we could have like an affirmation of all the contents of the questionnaire, including those.
I'm comfortable with that. I mean, this gets to the very important but very challenging to do part of this position, which is how do we verify these things? And I think we need to be clear that, I guess this goes to your recommendation, Ms. Beatles. Yes, we should have a signature block where they affirm that the statements they made are true. It's hard because we're asking opinions too. You know, how do you affirm that your opinions are true? But in the case of these minimum statutory requirements, where we are asking them to confirm that they have the degree, they have the 10 years of experience, they describe to us how and from which institution they graduated from, they should have to affirm that that is true.
Well, we could limit the affirmation to just the requirements of the statute, but it could also, and I don't have any problem with that. So, because yes, you're right. The rest is opinion, but you know, maybe other committee members like lawyer Bill Brankard might have an opinion.
Mr. Brankard, you've been volunteered for an opinion.
I think we struggle. I mean, going through these resumes, I struggled to try to figure out how people actually qualified for these positions. I guess maybe it's, you know, I'm old school in this sort of modern resume writing without dates or information that you can use to add up to get to 10 years, which you have to for either category of applicant. So it would be good, I think, to get people to actually state how they meet the qualifications rather than us trying to guess.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Ramones?
I think your suggestion to have that particular question asked is an excellent one. And having gone through initially the resumes that we've received this time, and actually last time too, it was hard last time, but it's particularly hard this time because like some candidates have, you know, they worked at a public utility, but their role had nothing to do with anything that, at least seemingly so, had nothing to do with what the PRC does. And so I think asking your question and the way you outlined it is an excellent one. And I don't know whether you have the affirmation right after that question. I guess that's where I would put the signature that they've told the truth about their qualifications.
I think that makes sense. So we can put I affirm that all of my answers in response to statutory qualifications as described in question number 15 or whatever it is are true. Insert signature here. Because again, it is our duty to ensure, I mean, some of these, they're all very important, but how do we as a committee check whether or not a commissioner shall not have a financial interest in a public utility in New Mexico? That is beyond what we as individuals are able to do. And so we do need them to clearly articulate that they comply. So I think what we're saying is yes to this big question where they answer it in detail, the statutory requirements, and then a signature block affirming the contents are true for this question about statutory requirements. Ms. Beatles.
Thank you. First, I'd like to recognize that committee member Ramones also is a lawyer, but more important, why I'm asked to be recognized just now is because I want to know, did you want the candidate to specify how they met the years of experience requirement, or did you just want or is yes sufficient? What is your question going to ask?
My instinct, but I'm open to feedback, would be detail. Please describe in detail with institution and total years listed how you meet these minimum requirements. A, baccalaureate degree, blah, blah, blah. B, attained higher education, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Whereas the other ones are yes or no. Do you have a financial interest? Yes or no. Have you worked for a regulated entity within the last 2 years? Yes or no. The political party one, I think I'd like to work with staff on how to write that, because I don't think there's anything in the statute that says you have to be registered with a party. You just cannot be registered with the same party as the other two. So I think with all of these recommendations, we're sort of tasking staff with updating this document. And this will come up if and when we make a motion, but I think there probably needs to be someone, maybe me, reviewing that final thing to make sure it matches what we talked about today. So staff is not in a position of writing a questionnaire for candidates. They're in a position to update the document to reflect discussion today and then distribute that once there's approval from maybe me. Was there feedback on whether or not we wanted to add the question I asked before, that big statutory one about expertise complementing that of existing commission and commissioners? I don't want to make this document too long, but that was my only kind of creative question. Or we could ask it just in the interviews.
Madam Chair, I think that's more of an interview question.
Okay. Ms. Beatles?
Yeah, I may be jumping ahead, correct me if I am, but do we really need question number 10?
Which is briefly describe your experience in the development or implementation of regulatory policy.
Madam Chair.
Since we're adding a few more questions, I was just looking for questions that we could omit, but sorry.
Ms. Ramones, was that in response to Ms. Beatles?
Yes, it was. I was wondering if instead of eliminating it, again, it's the specifics, because in looking at these resumes, they raised almost as many questions about some of these candidates as they answer. And so I was looking for some specifics, like, and I think it kind of goes to question 10, your role and experience in participating in the process of setting rates, your role or experience in promulgating regulations, and giving us an example, your familiarity and experience with New Mexico's Energy Transition Act, because so many of them are from out of state. So those were maybe the three things that I would pin down and put into in lieu of 10, or to expand on 10.
Response to that, Ms. Beatles?
I'm just mulling it over right now. I do like those specific asks. So briefly describe your experience in utility rate setting. What was the next one, Ms. Ramones?
Your role or experience in promulgating regulations.
Promulgating regulations, New Mexico's Energy Transition Act, or generally development, or generally the development or implementation of no, I like your questions better than how 10 is currently worded.
Well, and part of the reason I thought this would be helpful is we have a group of attorneys, and they say they're energy attorneys. Well, there's a lot of ground that's covered by being a lawyer who handles energy, and some of it's very relevant to what the commission does, and some of it I would argue is irrelevant to what the commission does. And that's why I thought we might want to rephrase it and be more specific. Role and experience in participating in the process for setting rates. Role or experience in promulgating regulations. The most relevant examples are directly related to the jurisdiction of the commission. If not jurisdiction related, explain why the experience is relevant. And then the Energy Transition Act. And that's a mouthful, but I'll be happy with any portion of it or any rewrite of it.
And
maybe I think this happened at 3 a.m. this morning.
And maybe we could include something relating to the telecommunications industry too.
Oh, sure.
How would we include that? Just so staff's not having to come up with this on the fly.
Well, you could say briefly describe your experience in the development or implementation of regulatory policy, including utility rate setting, the promulgation of regulations, New Mexico's Energy Transition Act, and
the role of the commission's role regarding telecommunications.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of something that would fit in without being too wordy, but I've reached a block. Maybe committee member Nicolau's other questions pick up that point already, and we should just leave those alone and include your suggestions to number 10.
So don't add the telecom piece because we think it's captured in the other additional questions as discussed. So I'm going to summarize where I think we are right now, which is in looking through the document, the old document from the start, we are changing number 7 to be more open-ended. We are eliminating 8. We are changing 10 per this discussion. We are cutting off the final clause in 12. We are deleting, my numbers are messed up now, I think 13, PRC exceeding authority. We are adding the 2 telecom specific questions discussed earlier, and we are adding this big statutory compliance question block and signature affirmation. Have I missed any of the changes we've discussed so far?
According to my document, it's number 14 that we're eliminating and not 13.
Thank you. Are there additional points for discussion about the questionnaire? So, hearing none, I think what needs to happen is that there needs to be a motion to approve the questionnaire. However, we want to make sure it looks good to go. I think this is how we did it with the job description as well, where someone made a motion to direct staff to update it based on the discussion. And then I gave it the final green light before it went out to, in that case, the public, in this case, candidates. That's probably where we need to go next, somewhere like that. But I defer to the attorneys if you all think it's a different next step.
I mean, I move to approve sending out the questionnaire with the changes that we've discussed so far in this meeting, subject to Chair Seguin's final review.
I second that.
Is there a discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair, and I guess we can make sure this is okay with the Attorney General's office. But I think if you run into an issue where you're trying to figure out what some other committee member intended, that possibly you can reach out to that committee member also. I think we can do that without having a rolling quorum.
Madam Chair, staff will do that to clarify any questions we have.
Super. Any other discussion on the motion? I think for this one, we should do a roll call vote. So staff, if you wouldn't mind launching us into that, please.
Member Ramones.
Aye.
Member Brankard.
Yes.
Member Beatles.
Aye.
Member Nicolau. Yes. Member Lovato.
Yes.
Member Baldonado.
Yes.
Chair Seguin.
Yes.
Madam Chair, your vote is unanimous.
Okay. Good work, everybody. So I wonder if we want to take a short break, maybe just a 10-minute break before we move into the next, or well, we have a report next and then the action item around candidates. Do people want to take a short break or just keep rolling? Seeing a head nod. Short break.
Yeah.
So let's take a 10-minute break. It's 11:55, so 12:05 return to move into item 10, the report. See you in 10 minutes. My clock is showing us at 12:05. So I wonder if we have everybody back, or we'll move to getting started in a minute here. So I cannot totally see everyone in the room. I think I see Miss Nicolau and Mr. Brankard. So I think we have a quorum, which I assume we need to start again. So unless anyone interrupts me saying that we don't have a quorum and I should stop, I'm going to call us back into the meeting. And our next item on the agenda, item 10, is a report. And we have Miss Valencia to give us a job posting report. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I headed up the efforts to get the ad and the call for commissioners out. I have a brief presentation to show you. If you'll just bear with me. So we have several places that we placed the ad. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. We have several places that we, actually many places that we looked to place ads. What we found was these that are listed here. So we did a print ad in the Hobbs News Sun. We posted through our accounts, existing accounts on Indeed and LinkedIn, and those are for the job postings. We posted on the National Society of Professional Engineers in New Mexico. We posted we did a print ad again in the Navajo Times, the New Mexico Bar Bulletin, the New Mexico Society of CPAs, the New Mexico, the magazine. They have an e-newsletter that we had an ad run through. Public Utility Fortnightly and the Tri-City Record, and that's the newspaper in Farmington area. And the total expenses incurred was $4,377.25. Just so you know, like I said at the beginning, we explored a number of other options, including Utility Dive, Western Interstate Energy Board, the Western Electricity Coordinating Council, and many others. What we found overall was that either they did not have advertising opportunities. If they did, some of them we had missed the deadlines already. And or the third thing that happened particularly with Utility Dive was that the cost to run ads exceeded our budget, or would have taken all of our budget, and probably then some. So other recruiting efforts, though, that we were able to do is, of course, we posted to our website, to the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission website. We issued a press release. As you know, Madam Chair, you and the Secretary issued an op-ed. We also asked for Secretary Monette of the New Mexico Indian Affairs Department to issue an email, a call for commissioners for us, to tribal leaders. And then our Chief of Staff, Choya Curry, followed up by reaching out to the chairman of the All Pueblo's Council of Governors. And then we also posted to our NM Public Regulation Commission social media channels. Our results, we received 35 applications total and 1 formal inquiry that did not end up turning into an application. 3 of those candidates later withdrew, so we have 32 total candidates for your consideration as of this morning. So I just have a few recommendations for next time we enter into this process in a couple of years. I would strongly suggest starting the process earlier so that we could identify target publication locations as early as May. I think would be really helpful for us to get that started. For some of the publications, we missed the deadlines, even with 40 days that we had before the application deadline. And then it does take a number of people hours to coordinate the ad placement. You know, we have to issue a PO, we have to get the quotes, all of that. So if we could have more time just to get that all out, I think that would be really helpful. And I stand for questions.
Thank you for this presentation and for all the work that you and the team put into getting the ad posted. I see Ms. Beatles with a question or a comment, and then I'll see if others have them as well. Ms. Beatles.
Thank you, Ms. Seguin, and thank you for all that work, Ms. Valencia. And I would like to have an example of one of the publications whose deadline we missed because they require like significant lead time, just for future reference.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Beatles. I don't have that information in front of me, but I could certainly email the committee with that information.
Yeah, I'm just curious for future reference.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? I saw on the spreadsheet of applications, names, etc., some of them listed where they came in through LinkedIn or Indeed. Do we have a sense, I guess, other than those 2 channels, we probably didn't track, or we didn't ask people to say how they found out about the job, so we can't really determine which of these avenues was our best. Is that right?
Madam Chair, yes. I didn't ask the other applicants who emailed me directly, but we were able to tell which applicants came in through LinkedIn and Indeed, and the vast majority did come in through those channels.
Thanks. This may be a question for Choya on how this committee can better institutionalize the process of getting started earlier. I know many of our terms will be expired before the next go round here, and obviously there was some staff turnover, but is there a way to put it into the chief of staff's calendar, not to put the job on you, Choya, but to try to heed some of these recommendations for us to get started earlier, or the future nominating committee to get started earlier for the next open seat?
Madam Chair, I'm racking my brain for the same answers. You know, we learned some lessons in this instance, not the least of which how best to communicate with you committee members. And so I think there was a couple of months at the beginning of this process that were lost because I wasn't quite sure the best way to communicate with you. So that is an answer that we have. We know better now. I don't have a way of memorializing this for future staff, future chiefs of staff, except to say that we are really making an effort within the PRC to standardize processes, procedures, and file locations so that next time the questionnaire is more easily accessible, next time the processes are more easily accessible. And if I may, since I have my microphone on, also say that if we can start this at the beginning, or excuse me, in May or June before the end of the fiscal year, it frees up more budget as well. Because now we get to dip into the end of the fiscal year money that we can use, bar money or excuse me, leftover money, and beginning of fiscal year budget. So doing it across the summer months would be helpful in both time and resources.
Troy, that brings up another question for me. Do you all, I wonder if you, on a moving forward basis, feel like there needs to be a larger budget for advertising? I don't know how that gets built into your budget that goes before the legislature and the governor's budget, but if there's something the nominating committee needs to do to support an ask like that. I was surprised looking at that document, Ms. Valencia, that you put on the screen. It's pretty expensive, it looks like, to get these ads up.
Madam Chair, yes, we were surprised also on the cost of some of them. Again, lesson learned. We know kind of what to expect now and what it would take to do that much of a better job next time. So we have started building in more budget for this, assuming that we can get the process started earlier. All of that will make for a more robust process. We built in advertising to the end of this. Each year, we've been kind of trying to build in. Our FY26 requests just went in, and we did build that in, or at least we kept that in mind as we were building our request.
Great. Well, thank you all for the great work on this. And I think I can maybe speak for other committee members when I say 32 candidates at the end of the day. I was pleased to see that. So thank you. Any other discussion, questions, comments on the staff report? Okay. Let's carry on. Thank you, Ms. Valencia, and move on to number 11 on the agenda, action items, review candidate applications and review candidates to receive questionnaire. So I wanted to ask a process question to start, how we want to do this. So whether we want to go around and have everyone identify top candidates, or rather if we prefer someone to just start out with a slate of names. I think in the past, we did it more like that second option. There was a slate of names for consideration, or we could go candidate by candidate. But I wanted to start before we talked about people to talk about process here on how we want to do this. Are there any strong opinions on the process?
Madam Chair, this is Ron.
Please, Mr. Lovato.
Just a quick question. Could we get a quick reminder, I guess, in terms of what? So this next person or candidate needs to. There's some criteria, right? They cannot be, as an example, they can't be a Democrat. I noticed there's one gal in here. She's not even a registered voter. I wasn't sure how to interpret that or how to categorize that, because that, I guess that means she's not a Democrat, right? Or I guess if you could, I was just hoping you would give us a quick criteria tutorial, if you will. Thanks.
Well, I have in front of me the requirements set forth in statute, and we talked about these a little bit earlier in the context of the questionnaire. So maybe I'll run through these with this big asterisk, which is to say not everybody answered all of these, which is why I think we want to put it in the questionnaire too, to have them verify it. And certain things like party affiliation, you know, we're kind of just going on their word here, or people just didn't even include it. So what I see, section 62-19-4 and 62-19-5 specify the eligibility requirements are: 1, candidates must be independent of the industries regulated by the commission and possess demonstrated competence. 2, to be appointed as a commissioner, candidates must be qualified for office by either, here we go, this is the big one, A, a baccalaureate degree from an institution of higher education that has been accredited by a regional or national accrediting body, and at least 10 years of professional experience in an area regulated by the commission or in the energy sector and involving a scope of work that includes accounting, public or business administration, economics, finance, statistics, policy, engineering, or law, or attained higher education resulting in at least a professional license or a postgraduate degree from an institution of higher education that has been accredited by a regional or national accrediting body in a field related to an area regulated by the commission, including accounting, public or business administration, economics, finance, statistics, policy, engineering, or law, and at least 10 years of professional experience within that field. Next requirement, a commissioner shall not have a financial interest in a public utility in New Mexico or elsewhere and shall not have been employed by a commission-regulated entity at any time during the 2 years prior to appointment to the commission. Next, commissioners must devote their entire time to the business of the commission and may not pursue any other business or vocation or hold any other office for profit. And then the last piece is that no more than 2 commissioners can be from the same political party. And we have 2 registered New Mexico registered voters registered with the Democratic Party presently.
Thank you.
So opinions on how we do this, I think, unless there's strong opinions, my recommendation would be see if anyone has a slate of names they want us to consider as a starting point, just because that's how this committee has done it in the past, and use that as a launching off point.
I have
Anybody
a
want to
list.
start?
Madam Chair, I have a list of 8 that I would, that I think meet the criteria and that I would like to suggest we consider.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. I have, and I hope I'm pronouncing or not totally slaughtering this name, Chukwu Blessing, Jim Ellison, Stephen Meyer, Flavia Smith, Greg Nybert, Colin Wakovich, and one more, Sean Wilder. You want me to repeat those?
I think I have them recorded here unless anyone else wants Mr. Ramones to repeat those. So maybe let's see if there's discussion on those names first. Or if you want to add people or subtract people. I did have a question. I didn't see a cover letter for Sean Wilder. And so unless I missed it, I guess that's a question for the committee. Is that okay? We did ask for a cover letter and a resume in the job posting. That was the only one of that list I don't think I have both for.
Madam Chair, this is Choya. Just as a note, that cover letter has since come in, but it was received after the deadline. But the initial application was received by the deadline.
Okay, and I know we asked staff to follow up with people who didn't submit completed applications, so that would not be the only candidate who was asked for something.
Madam Chair, this is Sarah Valencia again. I believe that Dr. Wilder was the one that was traveling through Saturday. So I think we just received that this morning.
Thank you. So I know I said I don't need you to repeat them, but I thought you said you had 8 and I think I counted 7.
Oh, maybe I can't count. Let's see.
No,
So
that's okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it.
okay, Chokwa Blessing, Jim Ellison, Stephen Meyer, Greg Nybert, Flavius Smith, Colin Wakovich, and Sean Wilder.
No, it's me. That was 8. Or wait, no, that's 7.
No, it's not. It's 8.
7. Is it?
Well, Chakwa 1, Jim Ellison 2, Stephen Meyer 3, Greg Nybert 4, Flavia Smith 5. Oh, Annabelle Tobias. I missed that one. That's me. That's 6. Colin Wakovich 7, and Sean Wilder 8. So it's me. I skipped one.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone want to throw any other names out for consideration?
Madam Chair, this is Committee Member Nicolau.
Please go ahead.
I have some of the same names, but not all the same. Would you prefer that I read through my list? It's I believe 7.
Sure, that sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have Greg Nybert. Number 2, Stephen Meyer. Number 3, Diana Lindstrom. Number 4, Daniel Hunel. Number 5, Blessing Chukwu. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Number 6, Deborah Hicks. Number 7, James Ellison.
So the additions, lots of overlap. The additions I heard were Daniel Hunel, Diana Lindstrom, and Deborah Hicks.
Correct.
So that would be 11. 8 plus 3. Other names. I think what I'm doing now is just adding names, and then if we want to go through and remove anyone, but hearing what the universe is that folks wanted to send the questionnaire to.
Madam Chair, between the 2 lists already read, that covers all of the people that I had on my list, so I wouldn't have any more to add.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I had Olin Gillespie and Maria Sibiero on my list, in addition to some of the ones that have already been said.
Okay. So that has us at 14. And I'm going to read them again so far. With the same apologies to anyone for any mispronunciation. Maria Berrio, Chukwu Blessing, James Ellison, Daniel Hunel, Stephen Meyer, Colin Walkovich, Colin Gillespie, Greg Nybert, Sean Wilder, Diana Lindstrom, Deborah Hicks, Flavia Smith, Annabelle to Boas. Any additions or, oh, go ahead, Mr. Bolden.
Was that 12, Madam Chair?
I think 14.
Okay.
13? Something's going on with counting today. $13 now is what I'm getting, my new math. Yeah, 13. So would anyone like to add any other names or make the case to remove any of these names? Okay. Well, this is fairly straightforward then. I think we could entertain a motion to move these candidates forward into receiving the questionnaire. This list of 13, which I will read again in somewhat alphabetical order. Maria Barrio, Chukwu Blessing, James Ellison, Daniel Hunnell II, Stephen Meyer, Colin Welkovich, Colin Gillespie, Greg Nybert, Sean Wilder, Diana Lindstrom, Deborah Hicks, Flavia Smith, Anibal Tavoas. 13. Is there a motion to consider?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I move that the names that you just read, the 13 names, receive questionnaires.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Discussion. I actually had a question that I should have asked earlier, but I'll ask it in this discussion period. There was one candidate, Michael Manuelito, who I did not see in his materials that he indicated he was a registered Democrat. However, the document, the spreadsheet shows that. And I wasn't sure if I missed it or what. But otherwise, I think I would recommend adding him to the list. Sorry.
Madam Chair, I believe that information may have been obtained verbally when we requested a cover letter for him.
Well, I suppose then we shouldn't extend the questionnaire since we know that someone cannot be a registered Democrat. If you feel fairly confident that that was the exchange.
I did not call him. I will check with Katrina, who did right now.
Ms. Beatles.
Thank you, Ms. Seguin. I was going to raise this at some point in the meeting. It's my understanding that in order to be eligible for selection by the governor, the candidate must not have been a registered Democrat within a certain amount of time. And I think that's 6 months. And is our DOJ lawyer on the meeting still? And does she know the answer to that question?
Madam Chair, Member Beatles, our DOJ lawyer had to drop off. This is Troya. But we can make a note to research that.
Because we may have to verify at some point that the candidate was not a registered Democrat within, the certain amount of time going back.
Madam
That may
Chair,
be something. Oh, go ahead, please.
I'm so sorry, Madam Chair, committee members, this is Sarah Valenti again. Yes, I just confirmed with Katrina that Mr. Manuelito did give her the information verbally that he's a registered Democrat.
Thank you. Okay. So my amendment to the motion then, or my discussion point, strike that, ignore that. Ms. Beatles, to your point, I wonder if this goes back to the final check on the questionnaire. Is in the portion in the questionnaire, the language about registered party affiliation subject to the counsel we received from the DOJ. Maybe we can get that counsel from her about how to incorporate that 6 month, if it is the requirement that it's 6 months, that time window into that question.
Great, thank you.
And
Okay, so back to discussion on the motion. Yeah, Ms. Ramones.
Oh, well, this may not be, this isn't in relation to the motion. Maybe we should adopt the motion and then I'll ask my question.
Okay, so any other discussion on the motion? Let's please do a roll call vote. If staff would help us out with that, please.
Member Ramones,
Yes.
Member Brankard,
Yes.
Member Beatles,
Yes.
Member Nicolau,
Yes.
Member Lovato,
Yes.
Secretary Baldonado,
Yes.
Chair Seguin.
Yes.
Madam Chair, your motion passes unanimously.
Okay. So the deadline that we set at the previous meeting for the questionnaire is that they will be due by close of business on September 27th, just as a reminder. Ms. Ramones, I know you had a question or comment.
My question is about the qualifications, and so it would be a question for our representative from the Department of Justice. And the question is, do all of these candidates, however they qualify experience-wise, does it need to be 10 years? Or is it just 10 years regarding an industry regulated by the PRC, and then no requirement in terms of how many years if their experience is in the specified fields like law, finance, engineering? Because I read it both ways, and I would like to know what the position of our Attorney General is.
Madam Chair, Member Ramones, you can't see me, but I'm nodding. We will make sure to get that question asked.
Thank you very much.
So maybe if it's possible, Troya, to have an email to committee members with the 2 DOJ questions that we just heard answered. The first is on the time period in which the person could have switched their party affiliation. What is the requirement around that? And then the second question is related to the qualifications, the 10 years of experience and the field it's in. What is the letter of the statute there on how we consider those qualifications?
Will do, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, we went through this last time. And the problem is there's a definition of professional experience in the statute. However, to make it work, I think that definition should only apply to the people with a bachelor's degree, as opposed to those with a professional degree, where it specifically says professional experience within that field. Now, I agree with Ms. Ramones, it's ambiguous. And so we struggled with it last time.
Ms. Ramones, did you have something to say?
I was just going to clarify what Member Brainerd is saying is that if it's an advanced degree with a license, then there's no requirement in terms of how many years experience. Is that how you understand the statute?
The issue is if you have it, let's say if you have a law degree, you still have to have 10 years of experience being a lawyer. But you also have to meet the other professional experience definition, which says it has to be within energy, etc., that somebody with a BA would have to meet. Do you need
So
10
does everybody
years?
need 10 years? Does everybody
Everybody
need 10
needs
years?
10 years. It's just, what is that 10 years?
So we'll get clarity, but both subsections A and B do mention 10 years, but they refer to different things. So we will get an answer from Ms. Hovey via email, and then also we've agreed that candidates will have to answer this specifically as well in their own words. That will help us make this determination.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Member Brainerd.
Okay, so I think we're done with item 11 related to candidates receiving the questionnaire. Moving into closing remarks by the chair in terms of discussion of next steps. So as I said, the questionnaire will be due back from candidates by close of business on Friday, September 27th. And then we are scheduled for our next meeting on October 9th, starting, I believe, at 10 a.m. Do we have a location for that yet, Choya? Do you know?
Madam Chair, committee members, we have rooms at the Capitol reserved where we are right now, although the room does change depending on the meeting date. Before we put out that notice, we might explore how many members will be in person versus how many members will be remote because of logistical issues. It is by far significantly easier to hold the remote meeting at our offices. So
Understood.
Conversation.
And on that meeting, we will review the questionnaire responses and determine which candidates to move forward to invite to interviews. As well, I understand from our conversation with Ms. Hovey today, we'll also have our briefings on the various acts that we need to comply with. And then the interview days that we've set aside are October 23rd and 24th. If we need both days. And then we are scheduled to meet again on Thursday, November 7th to discuss those interviews and finalize our list of names to be submitted to the governor. Those are my only closing remarks other than to say two things. One, thanks everybody for participating today. And again, thanks to the staff from the commission and to the Capitol facilities for providing us with a space. And I know this one was weird with a bunch of people being on the road right now. So I don't know if it will be a trend that all of us are remote. I think it might have just been the unfortunate nature of this week in September. My second thing is that I would like to pass it to Ms. Ramones to end our meeting with a joke, as per tradition.
Per tradition. Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, this is a very special joke because it's not only Santa Fe, woo, it is also relevant to our task about electricity. So, why did the monk meditate with his light bulb? He hoped it would give him enlightenment.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Over and
you.
out.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we will adjourn the meeting at 12:45. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.